It is fear that keeps us separated, because fear is false evidence appearing real. It's an acronym. F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. Because most of your fear is based on propaganda.
E pregare al Signore perché ci unisca tutti. E avanti, siamo fratelli, ci diamo spiritualmente questo abbraccio e lasciamo che il Signore finisca l'opera che Lui ha incominciato.
And the question the interviewer asked Pope Francis was this: what are his thoughts on fundamentalism? This was his response: a fundamentalist group, although it may not kill anyone, although it may not strike anyone, is violent. The mental structure of fundamentalists is violence in the name of God.
And you're now with the Forerunner Chronicles. All right, everybody, so as the majority of you out there already know, recently there's been a dramatic increase in violent activity everywhere. And I'm not just talking about these acts of violence in which individuals are jumping out of their vehicles in a road rage and then they end up committing a homicide by shooting someone's parent in their face. Or these other individuals that just go and grab knives and go and stab all their family members. They stab their co-workers, neighbors, classmates, roommates, friends. They just stab any random individual for that matter, just because that random person just so happened to be within arm's length of themselves. And by no means, I'm not trying to make light of any of these violent scenarios, because there's nothing to be made light of them. Frankly speaking, they're nauseating. But what I would really like us to focus in on at this time are those acts of violence which are currently being defined by the civil powers of our world as acts of terrorism. Because the most recent acts of terrorism that are gaining the greatest bit of notoriety around the world are those which have been credited to being the activities carried out by a universally notorious organization as of late known as ISIS. And I know you know who ISIS is, because that name ISIS has been on the headlines of every major news outlet in existence. For instance, not too long ago, ISIS made the headlines because they completely showered a freedom of speech convention in Copenhagen with several rounds of ammunition from a fully automatic weapon. And then, even more recently than that, ISIS once again gained the attention of the global media as a result of them taking over 20 Egyptian Coptic Christian men, lining them up on a beach, and then beheading them in cold-blooded fashion. We're talking about some seriously blood-curdling stuff here. But what I find even more intriguing than that, and yes, I do find something more intriguing than that. What I find even more intriguing than that is that as the smoke was settling over the cinematic-like bloodshed that has forever stained France in connection with the Charlie Hebdo incident, Pope Francis was on board a plane headed for the Philippines, and he was accompanied by the press. And he was discussing with them where he believed the line must be drawn in the sand when it comes to the defense of religious freedom and the exercise of the freedom of speech. And Pope Francis made some statements in a very uncharacteristically animated fashion, I might add, that were so mind-boggling that everyone that heard those words passing out of his mouth should have shrieked in horror. But instead, of course, his statements elicited chuckles, because everyone thinks that Pope Francis is a cuddly teddy bear. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to tell you what he said. I'm going to allow you to see and hear it for your own selves. And as you listen and as you watch, you will realize that something very insidious is on the horizon. Take a look.
È vero che non si può reagire violentamente.
I believe you cannot react violently, but if my good friend Dr. Gaspari says a curse word against my mother, he can expect a punch.
Ma è normale.
It's normal.
È normale.
You cannot provoke. You cannot insult the faith of others. You cannot make fun of the faith of others.
La fede degli altri.
And there you have it, just like that. With a lightning fast right jab, the man whom the majority of this generation have classified as the world's leader of morality, Pope Francis has displayed right before the media how he would readily physically respond to an individual if they ill-advisedly spoke about his mama. Really, what an absurd practice to advocate as acceptable by the man that's supposed to be, according to the Roman Catholic Church, the Vicar of Christ. And for those of you that are not familiar with that title, Vicar of Christ is Latin for the representative of Christ on earth. It's a title that's given to the Pope. But how could such a violent reaction to someone verbally assaulting one of your kin be a right representation of the character of Jesus Christ? Doesn't Jesus say in the book of Matthew chapter 5 and verse 39, "But I say unto you that ye resist not evil, but whosoever smiteth thee on the right cheek, turn to him the other also"? Doesn't Jesus say that there right in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 39? I know it's in my Bible. What about in the book of Romans chapter 12 and verse 21? Does not the word of God tell us there, "Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good"? Doesn't the Bible teach that? Clearly, ladies and gentlemen, the Bible teaches these high, exalted divine principles. And therefore, what we've just seen and what we've just heard clearly once again establishes that in the year 2015, just like in the Dark Ages between 538 AD and 1798 AD, the papacy is continuing a long tradition that they've adopted throughout the ages of exalting the prerogatives of finite men above the prerogatives of God Himself. But what I find extremely disturbing about this whole fiasco of the Pope on a plane throwing shadow punches to illustrate to the media how he would swiftly respond with violence towards an individual that cursed at his mother is that Pope Francis was not utilizing that illustration for some obscure purpose. He was using that illustration with a very definite purpose in mind. He used this illustration of how he would physically react towards someone telling a mama joke to depict to the world not only what he believes should be the expected response, but what he believes is the acceptable response as to how one should react towards another individual or group that purposefully disrespects the religious faith of another. That's serious. Ladies and gentlemen, just think about this for a second. Let's just say, for the sake of conversation, all right, let's just say that I was to call the Roman Catholic Church, which, by the way, is identified by the papacy as the Mother Church. So what if I was to call the Mother Church, the Roman Catholic Church, the whore of Revelation chapter 17? Or to use even more explicit language, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth, as it is said to be in Revelation 17 and verse 5. Would that be sufficient to solicit a violent response from the papacy? Evidently, yes. Because over 50 million Christians were tortured and sent to bloody graves by the papacy between 538 AD through 1798 AD because they protested against the papacy as the prophetic whore of Revelation chapter 17. But wait a second. Let's just say, for the sake of conversation once again, so hypothetically speaking, let's just say that I was to call the Pope, which, by the way, is identified by the papacy as the Holy Father, or in the Italian language, he's identified as Papa. So what if I was to call Papa, the Pope, the man of sin, the son of perdition, the Antichrist? Would that be sufficient to solicit a violent response from the papacy? Evidently, yes. Because over 50 million Christians, and I'm giving a conservative estimate, 50 million Christians were maimed and murdered by the papacy between 538 through 1798 as a result of protesting against the Roman Catholic Church and its Pope as the dominant Antichrist of Bible prophecy. But I have even a better one. Listen to this one. What if an organization known as ISIS was to behead over 24 Christian men, and then one stood up from the midst of their ranks and took his blood-stained knife and pointed it towards the sea, and then said, and I quote, "We will conquer Rome"? Would those types of words, would that type of rhetoric be sufficient to anger the papacy to such an extent that they would be led to mobilize an invisible campaign behind the scenes to influence all of the major political powers in our world, especially those that are located in the West, and seek to compel these civil powers not only to use their military might to take a punch at ISIS, but to take a strike at any organization and any individual for that matter that would openly denounce the authority of the papacy? Do you think that that may be possible? Well, ladies and gentlemen, only time will tell. And trust me, with the Pope scheduled to come to the shores of the United States of America this September in the year 2015, at which point he is scheduled to address the joint houses of the United States Congress, a feat which no other pope in the history of the papacy can add to his resume, I assure you, we are not going to have to wait too long to find out. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are looking at are the final unfoldings of Bible prophecy. The serpent has shown us his fangs, and he is getting ready to strike with all of his venomous power. The Bible tells us in Revelation chapter 13, beginning at verse 11, that the United States of America, under the prophetic symbol of a beast having two horns like a lamb, but then ultimately speaks as a dragon, will utilize its civil power to lead the nations of our world to confer reverential homage upon the papacy. We are told in Revelation 13 and verse 12, and he, meaning the United States of America, will exercise all the power of the first beast before him, being a symbol of the papacy, and causeth all the world, and them which dwell therein, to worship the first beast, the papacy, whose deadly wound was healed. Then in Revelation 13 and verse 15, the Bible goes on to say, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and he causeth as many should not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that no man might buy nor sell, save he that had the mark of the beast, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. This issue of the mark of the beast is getting ready to become a tangible reality that all of us are going to have to deal with.